curves fit the value of a violin. Okay. The year was 2012, and what you have here in front of you is the violin, the Lady Blunt Stradivarius violin of 1721, and it was sold for 15.9 million US dollars. It is one of the most expensive violin, and what's interesting here, I will tell you, is how could this small instrument be so expensive? And you think that this instrument is very, very old? I mean, yeah, this one is, this is very new. I think it's around 30 years old. But this instrument is 300 years old, okay? It's younger compared to the piano, which is probably 500 years old. So I'll tell you the reason why it's expensive. Well, as you see here, this is the history, the evolution of violin, starting from here, which they call it lira, and then you have here you have our violin now. And as you can see, even the bow, because the violin goes with the bow, how can you play the violin without the bow, of course? And before, the bow is like an arc. It's really a bow, that's why it's called bow, like this. So, and also, what we call this, the fingerboard has frets like guitar. I think most of you have seen guitar, and it has frets like that. So that it has a bow. Now, having this kind of bow, it will give you a different sense of music. It's very different if you have this kind of bow, and if you will play, and you will see in the history that we have this bow in the time of Baroque period. So most of the sound will be really on the string. You cannot kind of jump the bow because the bow is arced. Now, there's a guy named Amati, and he grew up in Cremona, Italy, and he was the first man who made this kind of violin. And from that moment on, it has become a standardized violin. And he is an apprentice. He took an apprentice, 14 years old boy, and that apprentice has become Antonio Stradivari. And according to the history, he has made around 1,000 to 1,100 violins, and only 600 of them survived. And only 2 of those 600 survived without what we call it, a scratch or some disfigured problems. So most of them are being renovated, repaired. So what makes a Stradivarius one of the finest violins in the world? They said that maybe Stradivari is a very hard-working violin maker, but I think it's not really, convincing. But according to some of the scientists who studied the Stradivari violin, they said that it's the wood of the violin that makes the Stradivarius violin. So even if you can import Stradivari at this time, the sound of the violin he'll create is still not as good as the violin he can make before. So that's the reason why. As you can see here, you have the different kind of these will show how old is the violin. And aside from that, there's another guy named Giuseppe Guarneri del Gesù, and he is one of the considered the only rival of Stradivari. So only 2 people are very known when it comes to violin making. So this is a sample of his work. And how can you own a Strad or del Gesù violin? If you ask a violinist, they will only tell you, for example, especially the very famous violinists, they will ask you, are you a del Gesù or a Strad violin? You know, it's like a high-end violin. Are you a del Gesù or a Strad violin? And there's only 2 ways to acquire that kind of violin. And that is by auction, which is, I think, very expensive. And the other one is by competition. By competition, I mean is that, for example, in the country of Canada, there is an instrument bank where they organize contests, competition for young musicians, and the musicians who will win that competition will able to choose the violin that they want to get for loan. Okay, so you still need to loan it. And what determines a violin's value? A lot of things, really. Who is the maker? Where was it made? What kind of wood? And who possessed your violin? For example, it has been possessed by a lot of famous violinists. And also, how old is your violin? So this one is a 1697 Stradivarius violin. The monitor sold for $3.6 million US. It's not as expensive as other violin, but what is very, very interesting with this one is that it was designed by Anne Akiko-Meirs, a Japanese-American violinist. And for me, what is interesting is during her interview, she was asked, why did she bought this kind of violin, the monitor, which according to them, it has been possessed by Napoleon Bonaparte. And it was named after one of his generals, the monitor. And Anna Akiko said, actually, you know what, I can have any violin that I want. And you know the violins of most famous people who are dead now, they are in museums. And then I realized that, yeah, all of the expensive violin, most of the Stradivarius violin, where are they? They're in museums. They're in the hands of the collectors. And she said that if I have this one violin, I can play it and I can share it to the world. And for me, it struck me because I believe that most of us, we have a vast of potential in ourselves that we need to tap it and share it to the rest of the world, like what Anne Akiko-Meirs. Thank you.